All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. What did Kyle Shanahan say on Monday after the 49ers Week 1 win? We hit that next. But first, a mention of Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They are open 7 days a week in both locations from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig in a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Get the brisket chili. Go say hi to Damon. Go say hi to Mary. Tell them that Larry Krueger sent you. All right, let's talk a little bit about the 49ers. They got a 30-7 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers in Week 1. And Kyle Shanahan talked to the media on Monday afternoon. And let's just go through some of the things that Kyle was asked and some of the answers that he came up with. First of all, he started off the presser by doing what he always does, talking about the injuries and, the injury situation coming out of the game. And the Niners were very fortunate. They did not suffer a bunch of injuries in this game. You never know. You can lose a lot of people in a football game. Well, Ambry Thomas was concussed, and he has cleared his concussion protocol. And so he's been cleared in his concussion evaluation. And so he'll return to practice this week, and he should be able to play Week 2 against the Rams. So that's how the presser started. The first question that Kyle got in the presser, of course, because the media is always hunting for the negative. That's what we do. We hunt for the negative. The Niners won 30-7. There was any number of really positive things that could have been said about this game. The one negative was that T.J. Watt destroyed Colton McKivitz's, and immediately Kyle was asked about that. Hey, what did you think of Colton McKivitz's? And it's like, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's tired, but it's just like so predictable. It's like the one guy who struggled. Let's ask Kyle about the one guy who struggled, because nobody wants to talk about anything positive. It's like, hey, let's hone in on the negative. It shows that we're great reporters. Anyway, they asked about Colton McKivitz, and Shanahan pointed out that, in his opinion, that McKivitz had far and away the toughest matchup on the field. Trying to match up with T.J. Watt, who 2 years ago was the reigning defensive player of the year in the league, was never going to be easy. And Shanahan kind of admitted that the Niners could have done a little bit better job of helping him out a little bit more on a couple of those snaps. But overall, he seemed to be somewhat pleased with the effort of McKivitz. Obviously, the results were not exactly what you wanted, because T.J. Watt had 5 of the 7 hits that the Niners gave up on Brock Purdy. 5 of them came from T.J. Watt, and he went against Colton McKivitz all day. But Shanahan was really clear to bring up the fact that McKivitz had the toughest matchup on the field all day, and that he didn't seem overly negative or bothered by McKivitz's performance. Only to say, hey, we could have helped him out more. We could have chipped him a little bit better. We could have helped him out a little bit more. And it sounds like maybe they will try to, in the weeks ahead, try to give McKivitz a little bit more help against some of the premier edge rushers that he'll go up against. He was asked about Nick Bosa, not a surprise. And he said that he felt like Bosa played really well against the run. He talked about how Bosa forced a holding call on the Pittsburgh offensive line, and just talked about how, they feel real fortunate that they were able to get him in there, win the game, have him shake off the rust, and still not expose him to any kind of injury. He came out of the game unscathed injury-wise. They got him in there in some pass rush. Obviously, they want to see him, rush the passer better and more often going forward. But they thought he played really well against the run and felt like he had an impact on the game. That was the kind of the takeaway that Shanahan threw out there when he was asked about Nick Bosa. Then he was asked about Drake Jackson. And, he cited that Drake had a great offseason, and that it was great to see Drake kind of carry that offseason growth and offseason work ethic into the regular season and be rewarded for it. He had 3 sacks. It was clearly his best day as a pro. The Niners are hoping that Drake can become a real force opposite Nick Bosa. And, Shanahan just said, hey, look, man, the guy had a great offseason. He had a great offseason. He's working hard. He's making improvements. He's getting better. and he carried that into this game. So he had good things to say about Drake Jackson. He was asked about Diamador Lenore, and he brought up the fact that Lenore had 10 tackles, 9 of them were solo, or 8 or 9 of them were solo. But Shanahan brought up how Lenore has quietly become a feisty, fast, physical player. And that's what we're seeing as well. He's way more physical than he was when he first came into the league. He looks a step and a half faster. His recognition is clearly better than it was even a year ago. And Lenore is just he's an exciting young corner prospect who keeps getting a little bit better. This year I thought he actually lost some weight, but he gained some upper body strength, and he kind of proportioned his body, and he's got more speed, more explosiveness, and you can tell he's a bigger, more physical hitter. He's a more forceful player than he was a year ago, and Shanahan noticed it as well, commented on it today. As far as he was asked about the protection issues that the Niners had, they gave up 3 sacks. They gave up 7 hits of Brock Purdy. And he said that there were some mistakes, that there were some of them were physical mistakes. Some of them were mental errors. Some of them were missed assignments. That it was a combination of physical and mental mistakes that led to a lot of the pass rush, failings that they had against the Steelers. Somebody asked if Nick Bosa would be a full go against the Rams, and it sounded like Shanahan was in that camp of saying, yeah, he came out of this game unscathed, and that was their goal. They want to ramp him up. They said that he felt like he was 100% when he was in there, and it did sound like Shanahan believes that he'll have a full repertoire of repetitions against the Rams in week 2 down at SoFi. And Shanahan was also asked about the defense. This was the first game that we've seen under Steve Wilks. The last 2 49er defense coordinators have become head coaches. Robert Saleh obviously has moved on, and D'Amico Ryans has now moved on. Saleh, the head coach of the Jets, D'Amico, the head coach of the Texans. And, Shanahan's takeaway was we went hard. He said he loved to see the overall defensive mindset. He said we went hard. We flew around. We made plays. He cited Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, and basically he said he liked what he saw. That's really it more than anything. There's always going to be things that you need to correct on the film. And there'll be new challenges next week on the defensive side of the ball. But what you're looking for more than anything else is your defense playing fast and physical? Are they intimidating? Are they flying around? Are they making plays? Are they playing for each other? Are they playing fast and physical? Are they going hard? Are they going, a million miles per hour? And Shanahan seemed to indicate that under Wilks, that he liked what he saw. And then he was asked about whether or not Jake Moody will be doing kickoffs at some point this year. And he said, yeah, that is the plan. That eventually when Moody fully is recovered from his quad injury, that he will take on the responsibility of the kickoffs. And I'm sure one of the things they love about Jake Moody is he's going to kick the kickoff through the back of the end zone and just eliminate kickoff returns altogether just with the sheer force and power of his right leg. So, yeah, he expects Moody to do kickoffs. He was asked about Javon Kinlaw, and he talked about how Kinlaw, avoided, basically absorbed blocks and kept the offensive linemen off the linebackers. And he cited that first Najee Harris run where he ran left and then wanted to get through the C gap, and you had Kinlaw absorbing basically the guard and the center, keeping them from climbing to the second level. And what happened? You're looking at Fred Warner, totally kept clean because no offensive lineman was on him because Kinlaw's absorbing them, and he was allowed to freely run and then detonate on Najee Harris. So even though, Warner gets the credit for the tackle on Najee, if you're watching the film and you're doing the film study, heck, Kinlaw is a big part of that as well, because he didn't just take on one guy, he took on two. He absorbed those blocks. He kept them off of Fred Warner's legs. Warner was then free to run and blow up the running back, and he subsequently did. So that's what Shanahan said about Kinlaw. And when he was asked about Brandon Ayuk, he said, the question was, like, how's Ayuk different than he used to be the last couple of years? And Shanahan just said, hey, overall he's more consistent. He's more consistent than he's been in the past, that he's, ready to play, that he had a big-time game. And then, clearly the highlight, and, the media knows that Shanahan's a former wide receiver. So what does he like to see? He loves to see wide receiver highlights, and he really loves to see wide receivers blocking downfield in the run game. And so he was asked about the 65-yard run by CMC that Ray McLeod and Brandon Ayuk got down the field and blocked for him all the way along the way. Basically were his bodyguards. He had an entourage taking him to the end zone, clearing a path. And, of course, Shanahan loved it. He loved it. He loved Ray getting down the field. He loved the fact that Ayuk decleated, was it DeMonte Casey, I believe, and knocked him on his tush. Great run by CMC. It was a difference-making play in the game. It changed the whole vibe of whether or not the Steelers could come back. At that point, you really felt like it was game over. It made a 20-7 halftime score, 27-7. And kind of put the thing away. But you could tell, for Shanahan, that was like, man, it gets no better. It gets no better than Ray and Ayuk leading the way for CMC down the sideline with physical blocks and this dogged determination to not be defeated, along the way. He loved it. He loved Ayuk and Ray McLeod bulldozing defensive backs, so CMC could go the distance. So there you go. There's the breakdown of the Shanahan presser. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. And thanks to all you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.